All right, welcome back to a bonus episode of the Blasters and Blades podcast. So, hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies, a place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. So, without further ado, let me tell you what we're doing right now. We're getting ready to release some of the archive that we found from when we were the sci-fi shenanigans. We're going to get those up there for the posts that were brought down. We thought you might enjoy them, and so without further ado, let us roll that beautiful. Oh wait, they're going to sue me. Play it.
Hey, all you crazy sci-fi fans. Time for your daily dose of insanity over here at the Sci-Fi Shenanigans podcast with your hosts, J.R. Handley and me, Chris Winder. Just two nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions. A place where the sky's the limit, space is the place, and nerds run the world. Without further ado...
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Sci-Fi Shenanigans podcast. Today we are going to do something a little different. This is going to be a mad minute sort of interview. We are interviewing all of the authors that contributed to the Backblast Area Clear military science fiction anthology. And today on deck we have author Josh Hayes and our partner with the Keystroke medium. So let's welcome Josh Hayes. Woohoo! Yay! All right. So. Yeah, normally I have Chris doing the cheering, but we wanted to get these out so quickly that I scheduled them so I could get them in as quickly as possible. And then he's going to spend his lunch breaks editing them so we can throw them out, one day after another just to get these out there.
Oh, yeah.
But
cool.
Let me read your introduction. In case you didn't know, he was guest number 1, episode number 2. So I'll throw that in the show notes so you can give it a listen. Ever since Josh Hayes watched his first Star Trek episode, the new Next Generation, not the original, he loved science fiction, watching it, reading it, and writing it. He grew up a military brat, affording him the opportunity to meet several different types of people in multiple states and foreign countries. After graduating high school, he joined the United States Air Force and served for 6 years before leaving military life to work in law enforcement. His experiences in both his military life and police life have given him unique glimpses into the lives of people around him, and it shows through in the characters he creates. When he's not writing, he spends his time with his 12 children and his poor wife, Jamie. Did we get anything wrong?
No, you're absolutely spot on.
Well, Jason Onspach said he was going to go for a kid per book, and so I figured, you're getting up there. You're going to have to start your own baseball team.
Oh, yeah. No, no more are coming. So we've got almost a basketball team.
All right. So the second part of the introduction, dear listeners, how I first found them. So I actually found Josh through the Keystroke Medium's YouTube channel. I was browsing through for writerly stuff, stumbled upon his group when they were doing the Explorations Through the Wormhole anthology series interviews. They were a lot of fun. And so I sort of started stalking him, as you do. We got a few restraining orders. Those expired, so we were able to become friends. And the Keystroke Medium people were extremely supportive. And so when we started our podcast, they were a lot of help to us. He co-hosts that with Scott Moon, another great guy who we're going to be interviewing here soon. So here we are. That's how I found him, stalking him, as you do. All right, so let's get on with it. I promised them a quick interview about these short stories, so short interviews. So what was your story called?
My story for the anthology was called A Prelude to Valor, and it was originally actually planned to be kind of a reader magnet. Maybe it still will be in the future, but for my Edge of Valor series that I'm working on right now.
All right. So, what is a basic synopsis of this short story? Like, obviously, you want them to still read it, so don't give them everything, but your elevator pitch, if you would.
So like I said, it was going to be a reader magnet, and so the main character, Jackson Fisher, is also the main character in my Edge of Valor novels, and this takes place like somewhere between 15 and 20 years before Edge of Valor takes place, and it is basically just an introduction to the world and the universe that Edge of Valor will be in, and an introduction to Fisher, and kind of give a little bit of his backstory and a little bit of his kind of origin story and how he kind of becomes the Jackson Fisher of the Edge of Valor novels.
Okay, so what was the inspiration for this short story? Normally, we ask if it was something like psychedelics, but you're a police officer, and I understand they frown on you being pertaining in such substances. So, what was the inspiration?
I had to come up with an event that would push Fisher in a certain direction. I needed him to be at a certain place to take on his role in Edge of Valor, and I needed to give him a basis of knowledge in those novels. And so this short story kind of came out of a need for all of that, instead of dumping all of it into either info dump or backstory in the novel. I just decided to go ahead and put it in a short story, and that way, I mean, it's not quite necessary information to have to know anything about Fisher, but it will definitely kind of expand on that, and you can see kind of it develops connections between characters that are in the novels, and you learn how he meets some of his best friends, and then also some of his worst rivals. You learn all of that in this story.
All right. So the next question was whether this fits in a larger universe or stands alone, which you just answered for us. So instead, could you give us a little bit of a synopsis, the elevator pitch, if you would, for the larger universe?
Yeah, absolutely. So Edge of Valor is the novel I'm currently working on. It's going to be published with Athon Books, hopefully in January or early February. It is going to be the first in a trilogy that I tentatively call the Cardinal Agenda. And basically, that is a military sci-fi universe, but kind of in a realm of a Jack Ryan-ish story, taken kind of that moniker from Tom Clancy's books, where if you've read like The Hunt for Red October, it is definitely a military fiction book, but the main character is not in the military, and you have points of view that are from different military characters, but the main and protagonist is not in the military, even though he's a veteran. So Edge of Valor deals with a mission that has gone wrong, and Jackson is an investigator trying to uncover the mystery of what happened on that mission. And during his investigation, things go awry, as they do, and ruckus and mayhem ensue. And so the interesting thing that I like to tell people about this story is, if you've seen Black Hawk Down and you've seen Courage Under Fire, which are both military war movies, both came out kind of in the 90s. One stars Denzel Washington and what is the girl's name? Now I can't think of her name. Meg Ryan. In Courage Under Fire, where Denzel Washington is investigating the events surrounding a posthumous Medal of Honor for the helicopter pilot, her character. And so it kind of delves. He's doing these interviews with the survivors of this mission, and learns the truth about kind of the horrible circumstances involved in what happened on that mission. And then Black Hawk Down is just a very real, visceral experience that you would have of what happened in Mogadishu when their helicopter, a couple Rangers that helicopter got shot down, and then their experiences trying to make it through that city and survive when hundreds and hundreds of enemy forces are kind of just enveloping them and holding them pinned down. And so basically the Edge of Valor takes both of those ideas and brings them into a futuristic military science fiction universe and tells the story of what happened on that mission. And when we go into that story, there's a whole bunch of lies and embellishments that happen, and it's a fun story.
All right. So you said that the first book in the series, Edge of Valor, is going to be military science fiction, but is the rest of the universe as well? All 3 books in the trilogy will fall under the Mil SF subgenre?
Yeah. They probably won't follow the same structure. The first novel, Edge of Valor, is kind of an odd structure for the genre, where predominantly through the main character's point of view, it is a third-person limited presentation. And then when we go to interview the survivors of the mission, it becomes a first-person, unreliable narrator. And so when you're learning about the first-hand accounts of these survivors of this mission, you very quickly come to realize that they're embellishing certain parts, but they're also lying about certain parts. And so you get to kind of experience and learn why they are lying and what happened on that mission through the investigators' questioning of those people.
All right. So again, this is clearly a military science fiction anthology. I said so in the title. So what is it about that subgenre that appeals to you?
You know, I've loved military science fiction since I started reading science fiction. David Weber is probably one of my number one favorite military science fiction series, long-running series. Honor Harrington and The Honorverse are just some really, really great books. There's some really neat things happening in mil sci-fi right now. You've got the Galaxy's Edge universe is happening. You've got Richard Fox, the Amber War, that's happening. You've got Michael Cooper and his now why can I out is it Outpost series? No, that's not right. Aeon 14 series.
Yeah.
Outsystem. Yeah. And you've got like Jonathan Yanez, you've got Jeff Chaney, Scott Moon, like all these people that I know that write military science fiction, and there's just an enormous reader base for it. And it's one of the funnest to read and one of the most intriguing and challenging to write, because a lot of genres have a lot of leeway. Like for instance, space opera, you could pretty much do whatever the hell you want in space opera. In military science fiction, if you get it wrong, people will let you know that you get it wrong, and it's very hard to come back off of doing something wrong in mil sci-fi. Whereas it's space opera, I mean, you could do whatever you want and people will forgive it because that is the genre of space opera. So I like the challenge of making it realistic, keeping the military tactics and the way military members talk. And I was in the military too, so I like to kind of keep that flavor of that environment in the stories.
The good news is, while they can be harsh if they don't like it, when they love it, they're rabid fans.
Absolutely, they are.
Just look what the fans of David Weber did with their own. They created their own TRMN universe, like uniforms. They have ship meetings. I mean, it's a whole thing. Like they got nothing.
Oh yeah.
Elk Club has nothing on them. and they do lots of good work too. Like they do a lot of charity and.
No, they absolutely do, and they've got, like you said, they have an entire con that is just specifically honor con. That is, if I create a series and somebody wants to have a con in my honor, like that's you've reached a certain level at that point.
Absolutely. All right. So speaking of military science fiction, your bio mentions that you served in the Air Force. So how do you feel like your time in uniform affected this specific story that you're telling?
I think that really what my time in the military really brings to the story is just some authenticity that you don't necessarily don't get from authors that write middle sci-fi that have never been in the military. But usually you can tell when somebody's writing middle sci-fi and has not been in the military or has not done their research. I say that with Tom Clancy in mind, who is one of the foremost, was one of the foremost military science fiction or military fiction authors, rather. And he never served a day in his life. He just did a lot of research. And so I think me being in the Air Force, a lot of the, how enlisted interacts with officers and how officers like to do things, and then the enlisted just kind of roll their eyes and they're like, yeah, okay, we'll do whatever you want, LT, fine. And you get some of those things that happen in the military that don't normally get presented in like a mainstream way, and so that helps a lot. And also, I was security forces in the Air Force. I'm also in law enforcement and in my civilian career, and so Jackson's his job as an investigator, and even the story, he's not an investigator. He's a sensor tech. But he finds himself in a situation where he uses his innate investigative skills to kind of solve some of the issues that they have going on, and that propels him further through his career. And so I think I take a lot of that. I wasn't technically an investigator when I was in the Air Force, but and I'm not a detective either, but I still have those innate skills where you're asking questions and you're reading through people's body language, and you're hearing what they're saying, but you're also hearing what they're not saying, and being able to pull those things apart. So I think I can put a lot of that into Fisher's character and make him, give him a true authenticity for what
Good
he
answer.
is.
All right. So the best line from the Tom Clancy, and Richard Fox reminded me of this one, is when they asked him how he wrote such believable military stuff because he never served. His answer was, "I have a library card." You can do some of
Right.
it with research.
Absolutely,
and that's what
and
most
it's
people
true.
don't realize, that if you can understand sports, that's a long way towards getting the military. Because little known fact, most sports started as training regimes for warriors, even golf. Although I don't understand how anybody could find that a useful skill.
Yep.
But I digress. I'm going to get hate mail now. I know it. How could you not like golf? All right. So the last question before we wrap this up, which I thought would be fun, is, given that you write military science fiction, which military unit from any science fiction franchise would you want to serve in, and why?
From any science fiction franchise, and why? Oh my God, that's tough.
I know I threw this in at the last moment, so he didn't get to prepare for this one, people.
I'm certainly biased towards a couple, right? Like
Right.
I write a couple. I actually have written 3 of these type units in the last year and a half, so I'm biased now, and I don't know which one of the 3. At some part of me wants to say the Legionnaires from Galaxy's Edge, but then another part of me wants to say the Pathfinders from my Terra Nova books with Richard Fox, because both of them have a certain kind of aspect to them that I find intriguing. I think, though, probably I'd have to go with the Pathfinders, because they, as a unit, are a little bit more specialized. They don't have to deal with the bureaucracy of the House of Reason, and having the unfortunate circumstance of having a point in charge of their unit. Most of the Pathfinders that you will find in leadership positions are actually good leaders and have actually served and done good work. So I'd have to say the Pathfinders, definitely, from Terra Nova and the Ember War.
I would actually say that that's probably the worst answer, and the reason is this. And I've asked this question once before, and I asked when I interviewed J.R. Castle, and I'd said that the worst unit to be a military serve under would be Richard Fox's Emberverse universe, because he's a little bit of a jerk to his characters, and there's no guarantee you're going to come out alive.
Did you say best or worst?
the best. And I'm saying Richards would be the worst because you'd most likely die because he's a jerk to his characters.
Yes. That is true. That is true. Well, see, the Pathfinders are mine. Like my unit is he hasn't done anything with the Pathfinders except off screen for his books. He usually puts all his armor and Terran Strike Marines in harm's way.
So that might be like a pocket of survivability in his otherwise death-defying universe. All right.
You're going to be in the Emberverse. Definitely join the Pathfinders. You'll have better luck there.
All right. So, Josh, as we wrap this show up, because we did promise them a mad minute, can you tell listeners how they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a Facebook page. Just search Josh Hayes Writer. I am on Facebook just under Josh Hayes. My website's joshhayeswriter.com. I also run Keystroke Medium, and that's pretty much where I spend most of my time if I'm on Facebook. So just you can Google or Facebook search Keystroke Medium, and we're the only one out there. We're the top on Google searches, and we're the only one on Facebook. So you find us there. That's where I'm most likely going to be hanging out at.
All right. And dear listener, you can find us as always on our website, www.sfshenanigans.com, our Twitter at SFS_show, our email podcast at sfshenanigans.com, and our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/sfshenanigans. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Chris Winder, I'm J.R. Handley, and this was the Sci-Fi Shenanigans Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of space and all things that go boom.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that archived episode that was in the digital memory hole that we found. We thought you'd enjoy it. So thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Nick Garber and Doc Cisca, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the archive for the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back at our regular scheduled time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom.